They found her on a Tuesday. 6 weeks after vanishing from her own engagement party, biotech CEO Fallon Hartley walked out of the Rocky Mountains barefoot, wearing a flannel shirt 3 sizes too big, and refused to tell anyone where she'd been. The FBI said Stockholm Syndrome. Her fiancé said trauma. Her company's board said she'd lost her mind. But here's what they didn't know. Fallon Hartley hadn't been kidnapped. She'd been saved. And the man they were hunting, the dangerous ex-Marine who allegedly held her captive for 42 days, wasn't her captor. He was the father of the baby growing inside her, a baby her fiancé could never know about. Because if Thayer Grosvenor discovered the truth, Keaton Vale wouldn't just go to prison. He'd disappear permanently. And this time, there'd be no rescue. Before we dive into this absolute chaos, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because Fortune 29 Mystic Tales is serving you the most unhinged, addictive, dramatic romance stories on YouTube. And trust me, you're gonna want to see how this train wreck ends. Now, let's rewind to where this all started. 3 months before Fallon Hartley became front-page news. Part 1. The Arrangement. Let me introduce you to Fallon Hartley. 34, geneticist, CEO of Hartley Biogen, a company worth $2.3 billion that she inherited when her father dropped dead of a heart attack 18 months ago. Also, gorgeous, in that intimidating, I'll destroy you in a boardroom and look flawless doing it kind of way. Auburn hair always in a perfect bun, designer suits that cost more than most people's cars, the kind of woman who drinks green juice for breakfast and has a morning meditation routine. But here's what the Forbes profile didn't mention. Fallon Hartley was terrified. Not of competition, not of failure, of him. Thayer Grosvenor, 44 years old, venture capitalist, her father's former business partner, and, as of 6 months ago, her fiancé. And I use that term loosely because Fallon didn't say yes to a proposal. She said yes to a merger. See, when Fallon's dad died, he left her the company, but Thayer owned 40% of the shares. The board wouldn't let her make a single decision without his approval. And Thayer, he made it crystal clear. Marry him or watch him tank the company and sell it for parts. So Fallon did what any brilliant woman trapped in a nightmare would do. She smiled, she wore the ring, she planned the wedding, and she started documenting everything. Fallon recorded herself on her phone one morning, her voice cold and steady. March 15th. Thayer slipped something into my coffee this morning. I felt it, the dizziness, the nausea. He said I was stressed, suggested I take a few days off. He's been doing this for months, making me weak, making me doubt myself. For 6 months, Fallon played the perfect fiancé while secretly gathering evidence that Thayer was embezzling millions from Hartley Biogen. But evidence wasn't enough, because Thayer had friends, powerful friends. FBI agents on his payroll, judges who owed him favors, politicians who'd looked the other way. Fallon needed to disappear. Not forever, just long enough to get her ducks in a row, long enough to destroy him without him destroying her first. But she couldn't just disappear. Thayer would hunt her down in 48 hours. She needed it to look real. She needed a kidnapping. Enter Keaton Vale. 36, former Force Recon Marine, dishonorably discharged 3 years ago for refusing to follow an illegal order that would have gotten civilians killed. After the Marines kicked him out, Keaton disappeared into the Colorado Rockies and started a wilderness survival school, teaching corporate types how to build fires and filter water, living in a cabin with no Wi-Fi, no TV, just books and solitude, and the kind of peace you only find when you've seen too much war. He wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble found him anyway. Keaton recorded his version of events later. The woman showed up on my cabin on a Wednesday, no appointment,
just walked up the trail like she owned the place. Told me her name was Fallon and she needed my help. Said someone was trying to kill her and she needed to disappear for a while. Offered me $500,000. Now, Keaton wasn't an idiot. He knew this screamed bad idea. But then Fallon showed him the medical reports, the toxicology results showing trace amounts of arsenic in her system, the recordings of Thayer threatening her, the bruises on her ribs from when he accidentally shoved her into a countertop. And Keaton, who'd spent 3 years trying to forget what it felt like to save someone, couldn't walk away. Keaton continued in his recording. She said she needed 6 weeks, said she had lawyers putting together a case but needed time for everything to align. Asked if I could make it look like a kidnapping, rough her up a little, make it believable. Fallon's voice shaking on her own recording. I told him he didn't have to hurt me. I could do that myself. I just needed him to take me somewhere Thayer would never find me, somewhere off the grid. So here's what they did. Fallon's engagement party was a Friday night, rooftop venue in Denver, 200 guests, champagne towers and caviar, and Thayer playing the devoted fiancé while Fallon smiled until her face hurt. At 10:47 p.m., Fallon excused herself to the bathroom. At 10:52 p.m., she walked out the service entrance where Keaton was waiting in a beat-up pickup truck. By 11:15 p.m., they were in the mountains. By midnight, Keaton had staged the scene. Fallon's purse abandoned on a hiking trail, her phone smashed on the rocks, a few drops of her blood, she'd bitten her own lip hard enough to bleed, on a tree trunk. It looked like an abduction. It looked perfect. And for the first 72 hours, the plan worked flawlessly. The FBI launched a manhunt. Thayer went on TV sobbing about his missing fiancée. The media went insane. And Fallon was in Keaton's cabin, learning how to chop wood and start fires and exist without the weight of Thayer Grosvenor crushing her chest. Fallon whispered into her recorder, her voice soft, almost wondering. I hadn't realized how small my life had become until I was finally out of it. In that cabin, I could breathe. For the first time in a year, I could breathe. But here's the thing about spending 6 weeks in isolation with someone. You start to see them, really see them. And Fallon saw Keaton. Not the CEO, not the billionaire heiress, just Fallon. The woman who cried in her sleep, who had panic attacks when it got too quiet, who flinched every time a branch snapped outside. The woman who, on day 9, kissed him in front of the fireplace and whispered, "Please, just make me forget for a little while." It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. And by week 3, Fallon Hartley and Keaton Vale weren't pretending anymore. Keaton's voice, raw in his recording. I knew it was wrong, knew she was vulnerable, knew I was taking advantage of the situation, but God help me, I couldn't stop. Every night she'd fall asleep in my arms, and I'd think, this is the last time. And then the sun would come up, and she'd still be there, and I'd think, just one more day. Fallon, he made me feel safe. Do you understand how rare that is? How precious? For the first time since my father died, I felt like I could be weak, could be scared, could be human. And he didn't try to fix me. He just held me while I broke. Week 4, they stopped setting an end date. Week 5, Fallon threw her burner phone in the river and told Keaton she didn't want to go back. Week 6, she realized she was late. 3 pregnancy tests later, Fallon Hartley sat on the bathroom floor of a mountain cabin and stared at 2 pink lines.
And Keaton, the man who'd convinced himself he didn't deserve good things, looked at her like she'd handed him the entire universe. Keaton said softly, "We'll figure it out. Whatever you want to do, we'll figure it out." Fallon, crying, "I want to keep it. I want to keep you. But Thayer's not going to touch you. Or our baby. I promise you that." Sweet, right? Except here's what they didn't know. The FBI had been closing in for days. And on day 42, a helicopter appeared over the cabin. The FBI didn't knock. They breached the cabin at 6 a.m. with flashbangs and assault rifles, screaming for Keaton to get on the ground. Fallon was in the shower, Keaton was making coffee, and in the span of 30 seconds, their entire world exploded. An FBI agent shouted, "Keaton Vale, you are under arrest for kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and—" Fallon screamed, wrapped in a towel. "Stop! Stop! He didn't! You don't understand!" But they didn't listen. They dragged Keaton out in handcuffs while Fallon sobbed and tried to explain, tried to tell them this was all a mistake, that she'd hired him. And then Thayer walked in. Oh, Thayer. Perfect suit, perfect hair, perfect expression of relieved fiancé. He looked at Fallon, barefoot, wearing Keaton's shirt, mascara running down her face, and his eyes went cold. Thayer, his voice dripping with false concern. "Darling, oh my God, what did he do to you?" Fallon, "Thayer, listen to me." Thayer, "We're going to get you to a hospital, get you checked out. You're safe now." And that's when Fallon understood. If she told the truth, that she'd orchestrated her own kidnapping, Keaton would go to prison for helping her stage a federal crime. If she lied, if she played the traumatized victim, Keaton would go to prison for kidnapping. Either way, he was screwed. Unless she sold it so convincingly that they couldn't prove otherwise. So Fallon Hartley, the woman who'd spent 6 weeks learning to be honest, looked the FBI agent in the eye and lied. Fallon, her voice shaking, "I don't want to talk about it. I just want to go home." The FBI agent pressed, "Miss Hartley, we need you to identify your captor. Is that the man who took you?" There was a long pause. Fallon finally said, "I can't. I don't remember. It's all blurry." Keaton's eyes found hers across the chaos, and in that moment, she saw him understand, saw him mouth the words, "It's okay," saw him let them take him because he loved her. And that's what you do when you love someone. You let them save you, even if it destroys them. Oh, you thought this was going to be simple, adorable, resolved? Babe, we're just getting started. Drop a comment right now with your prediction. Does Fallon tell the truth, or does she keep lying to save Keaton? And keep watching, because what happens next is going to make you lose your entire mind. They airlifted Fallon to Denver, put her through a medical exam, a psych evaluation, 12 hours of interrogation disguised as debriefing, and Fallon played her part perfectly. She was confused, traumatized. She remembered being taken, but couldn't identify faces. She flinched at loud noises. She asked for Thayer. The FBI wanted to charge Keaton with federal kidnapping, 25 years minimum, but without Fallon's testimony, they had nothing. Just a suspicious situation and a man who refused to speak. So they held Keaton in federal custody while they investigated. And Fallon went home to her penthouse, to her company, to her fiancé. And every night, she locked herself in the bathroom and threw up, because she was 8 weeks pregnant, and no one could know. Thayer spoke through the bathroom door one morning, his voice oily. "Fallon, darling, are you all right? You've been sick every morning this week. Maybe we should postpone the wedding, give you time to recover from your ordeal." The wedding. Right, because of course Thayer wasn't letting her go. In fact, he'd moved the date up. 3 weeks. That's all she had. 3 weeks to figure out how to save Keaton, protect her baby, and destroy Thayer before he destroyed all of them. No pressure. Fallon's half-sister, Sutton, was the first to notice something was off. Sutton cornered her in Fallon's office, whispering, "You're pregnant." Fallon tried to deflect. "I don't know what you're—" Sutton cut her off. "Don't. I've seen you throw up 3 times this week. You're glowing despite looking like hell, and you keep touching your stomach when you think no one's watching. So, whose is it? Because it sure as hell isn't theirs. You two haven't slept in the same room in months." Fallon could have lied, should have lied, but she was so tired of lying. Fallon, breaking. "Sutton, I need your help." So she told her everything. The fake kidnapping, Keaton, the baby, the evidence against Thayer, all of it. And Sutton, brilliant, conniving, ambitious Sutton, smiled. Sutton said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do." The plan was insane, but it was the only one they had. Step 1, Sutton would leak the embezzlement evidence to the SEC anonymously. Step 2, Fallon would visit Keaton in custody and convince him to stay silent for 3 more weeks. Step 3, on the day of the wedding, Fallon would expose Thayer publicly, get the charges against Keaton dropped, and disappear before Thayer could retaliate. Simple, right? Except nothing is ever simple. The FBI allowed Fallon one supervised visit with Keaton. They sat across from each other in a gray interrogation room, a table between them, guards watching every move. Keaton looked like hell, unshaven, exhausted, but when he saw her, his entire face softened. Keaton, his voice rough. "Are you okay?" Fallon whispered. "I'm pregnant." There was a heavy pause. Keaton. "Is it?" Fallon. "Yours. It's yours." Keaton, his voice breaking. "Fallon. Fallon, I'm getting you out. I have a plan. I just need you to trust me for 3 more weeks. Keaton. 3 weeks? What happens in 3 weeks? Fallon. I'm getting married. Keaton looked like she'd shot him. To him? Fallon. To expose him. Publicly. Legally. In a way he can't wiggle out of. But I need you to stay quiet. If you tell them the truth now, you'll still go to prison for conspiracy. But if you wait... Keaton. You're asking me to watch you marry another man while you're carrying my baby? Fallon, crying. I'm asking you to trust me. One last time. Keaton stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and took her hand.
The guards moved forward, but Keaton didn't let go. Keaton said firmly, 3 weeks, and then we're done running. Deal? Fallon. Deal. She almost made it. Almost. But 2 weeks before the wedding, Thayer walked into Fallon's bathroom while she was taking another pregnancy test. Thayer, his voice ice cold. Well, this is interesting. Fallon's blood turned to ice. Fallon started. Thayer. Thayer. How far along? Fallon. It's yours. Thayer laughed bitterly. Fallon, sweetheart, I had a vasectomy 10 years ago, so unless this is the second coming of Christ, that baby isn't mine. He paused, then continued. It's his, isn't it? The Marine. You didn't just hire him, you slept with him. Fallon had 2 choices, crumble or fight. She chose fight. Fallon, her voice steady. Yes, I did, and I'd do it again. Thayer's smile disappeared. Thayer, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure that baby is born in poverty. I'm going to make sure Keaton Vale dies in federal prison, and I'm going to make sure you spend the rest of your life knowing you destroyed him. Fallon, over my dead body. Fair, that can be arranged. That night, Fallon called Sutton. Fallon said urgently, We're moving up the timeline. We do this now. Sutton, the wedding's in 2 weeks. Fallon, I don't have 2 weeks. He knows about the baby. If we don't move now, Keaton's dead. Sutton sighed. Okay, I'll make the calls. What happened next was either genius or insanity, probably both. Sutton leaked the embezzlement evidence to the press instead of the SEC, and the story broke 48 hours before the wedding. A news anchor reported, breaking tonight, billionaire venture capitalist Thayer Grossvenor is under investigation for allegedly embezzling over $50 million from Hartley Biogen, the company owned by his fiancée. Thayer's response? He tried to pin it on Fallon, told the board she was mentally unstable, that her kidnapping had fractured her grip on reality, that she was making false accusations against him. The board called an emergency meeting, and Fallon walked in with a lawyer, a flash drive, and 6 months of evidence. Fallon, her voice like steel. Gentlemen, let me be very clear. Thayer Grossvenor has been embezzling from this company, poisoning me, and threatening my life for over a year. I have medical records, bank statements, recorded confessions, and if anyone in this room votes to protect him, I will make sure your names are in the headlines next. Silence. Then the board chairman spoke. The chairman said, Mr. Grossvenor, you're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building.
Thayer's face went purple with rage. Thayer snarled, "You think this is over? You think you've won?" Fallon, "No, but I think you've lost." As security dragged Thayer out, he looked back at Fallon one last time. "Thayer, the Marine's still going to prison. I'll make sure of it." But here's the thing. Fallon had one more card to play. She called Agent Marin Cross, the FBI agent assigned to her case, and told her everything. The fake kidnapping, the payment, the affair, the baby, all of it. Agent Cross asked carefully, "Miss Hartley, do you understand what you're confessing to?" Fallon, "Yes, and I'm willing to face whatever consequences come. But Keaton Vale didn't kidnap me. He saved me, and I won't let him go to prison for that." Agent Cross stared at her for a long moment. Then she closed her notebook. Agent Cross said quietly, "Off the record, I always knew something was off about this case. Vale doesn't fit the profile. And Grosvenor, let's just say we've had our eye on him for a while." Fallon, "So what happens now?" Agent Cross, "Now, you go get your Marine. I'll handle the paperwork." Keaton was released 48 hours later. No charges, no record, just a government apology and a check for unlawful detention. Fallon picked him up outside the federal building. They didn't speak. They just held each other in the parking lot while photographers swarmed and questions flew and the world kept spinning without them. Keaton, his voice muffled against her hair, "Is it really over?" Fallon, "It's really over." Keaton, "And the baby?" Fallon smiled through tears, "Still cooking." "Still with me? Because we're about to wrap this up, but not before things get even messier. If you're loving this roller coaster, hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me what you'd do in Fallon's position. Would you risk it all for love or play it safe? Let me know. Part 2, The Reckoning. 6 months later, Fallon sold Hartley Biogen for $3.2 billion. She and Keaton got married in the same mountain cabin where they fell in love, just the two of them, a judge and Sutton as witness. And on a freezing December night, Fallon gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Iris, after the flowers that grew wild around the cabin, after the new beginning they'd fought like hell to earn. Keaton held her daughter, his voice full of wonder. "She's perfect." Fallon, "She's ours." Keaton, "Think she'll forgive us for the chaotic origin story?" Fallon laughed. "I think she'll write a book about it someday." And for 3 beautiful years, that was their life. Quiet, simple, safe. Keaton ran his wilderness school. Fallon consulted for biotech startups from home. Iris grew into a wild, fearless little girl who loved hiking with her dad and doing science experiments with her mom. They'd won. They'd survived. They were happy. But here's the thing about people like Thayer Grosvenor. They don't just disappear. They wait. They plan. And when you least expect it, they strike. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Keaton brought it in with the rest of the mail, frowning at the expensive envelope with no return address. Keaton said, "Babe, this is for you." Fallon opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It was Iris at her preschool, playing on the swings, and written on the back in elegant script, "Beautiful daughter you have. Would be a shame if something happened to her." Fallon dropped the photo like it had burned her. Keaton picked it up, and his entire body went rigid. Keaton, his voice deadly quiet. "When was this taken?" Fallon, shaking. "Yesterday. That's the dress she wore yesterday."
Keaton immediately pulled out his phone and called the school. The school secretary answered. "Hartley Wilderness Academy, this is—" Keaton interrupted. "This is Keaton Vale. Is my daughter in her classroom right now?" The secretary. "Let me check. Yes, Mr. Vale, Iris is in circle time with Miss Chen." Keaton, "Don't let her out of your sight. I'm coming to pick her up. No one, and I mean no one, takes that child anywhere except me or my wife. Understood?" The secretary, concerned. "Mr. Vale, is everything okay?" Keaton, "Just do it, please." They pulled Iris out of school that day.
hired private security, installed cameras around their property, and waited for the next move. It came 3 days later. Fallon's lawyer called, his voice tight with stress. The lawyer said, "Fallon, we have a problem. Thayer Grosvenor is suing you for defamation and wrongful termination. He's asking for $2 billion in damages." Fallon, "He can't. He was found guilty of embezzlement. He went to prison." The lawyer, "He served 18 months and got out on good behavior, and now he's claiming that the evidence was fabricated, that you set him up because you wanted sole control of the company." Fallon, "That's insane." The lawyer, "I know, but he's got a very expensive legal team, and they're building a case. The preliminary hearing is in 3 weeks. Fallon hung up and looked at Keaton. Fallon said quietly, "He's coming for us, for everything." Keaton, "Then we stop him, permanently." Fallon, "Keaton, I'm not letting him anywhere near you or Iris, whatever it takes." But Thayer wasn't done. A week before the hearing, Sutton called Fallon, panicked. "Someone broke into my apartment last night. Didn't take anything, just left a message on my bathroom mirror in lipstick. It said, 'Tell your sister to drop the charges or you're next.'" Fallon, "Oh my God. Sutton, are you okay?" Sutton, "I'm fine, but Fallon, he's escalating. You need to do something." That night, Fallon made a decision. She called Agent Marin Cross. "Cross, it's Fallon Vale. I need your help. Thayer Grosvenor is threatening my family." "What kind of threats?" Fallon told her everything. The photo, the break-in, the lawsuit. Agent Cross was quiet for a moment, then said, "Fallon, I'm going to be honest with you. Unless he actually does something, there's not much we can do. Threatening behavior isn't enough for an arrest." Fallon, "So what, we're supposed to wait until he hurts someone?" "I didn't say that. Give me 48 hours. Let me see what I can dig up." But Fallon didn't have 48 hours, because the next morning, Iris didn't wake up. Fallon went to her daughter's room and found her unconscious, breathing but unresponsive. Fallon screamed, "Keaton, call 911!" They rushed Iris to the hospital. The doctors ran tests, blood work, toxicology screens, and what they found made Fallon's blood run cold. The doctor grimly, "Your daughter has been poisoned, slow-acting, probably administered over several days in small doses. If you'd waited another 24 hours, she would have gone into organ failure." Fallon, barely breathing, "What kind of poison?" The doctor, "Arsenic." The same poison Thayer had been giving Fallon years ago. Keaton lost it. He punched a wall so hard he broke 2 knuckles. Security had to restrain him. And Fallon went cold, ice cold, because she knew exactly what she had to do. While Keaton stayed with Iris, Fallon left the hospital. She drove to a storage unit on the outskirts of town, the unit she'd been renting for 3 years, the one Keaton didn't know about. Inside was a duffel bag containing everything she'd kept from her investigation into Thayer, including the one piece of evidence she'd never turned over to the FBI, a recording of Thayer admitting to murder, not her murder, attempted murder, actual murder, of a business rival who'd threatened to expose his embezzlement scheme. Fallon had been sitting on this evidence for 4 years, waiting for the right moment to use it. That moment was now. She called Agent Cross. "Fallon, I'm sending you something. Audio file. Thayer Grosvenor confessing to the murder of Marcus Chen in 2021. I recorded it during a dinner meeting 2 months before my father died. I didn't turn it over before because I was afraid Thayer would kill me before the trial, but I'm done being afraid." Agent Cross. "Fallon, where did you get this?" Fallon. "Does it matter? My daughter is in the hospital fighting for her life because that monster poisoned her. So you take this recording and you arrest him, or I swear to God I'll handle this myself." Agent Cross took the recording, ran it through forensic analysis, confirmed its authenticity, and 48 hours later, FBI agents arrested Thayer Grosvenor at his penthouse. This time, the charges weren't embezzlement. They were first-degree murder, attempted murder of a minor, stalking, witness intimidation, the whole 9 yards. And Thayer finally realized he'd lost. As they dragged him in handcuffs, he screamed at the cameras, "This isn't over! You hear me, Fallon? This isn't over!" But it was, because 3 months later, Thayer Grosvenor was convicted on all counts, sentenced to life in prison, no possibility of parole. And Iris recovered fully. The poison had been caught just in time. She'd never remember the hospital, the fear, the darkness. She'd only remember the camping trips with her dad, and the science experiments with her mom, and the life her parents had built from the ashes of their past. On the day of Thayer's sentencing, Keaton held Fallon on their front porch while Iris played in the yard. Keaton said softly, "It's really over now, isn't it? Fallon, it's really over. Keaton, what you did, keeping that recording all those years, that was smart, terrifying, but smart. Fallon, I learned from the best. Keaton, who, Thayer?" Fallon smiled. "No, you. You taught me how to survive. You figured out how to win all on your own." And she had. Fallon Hartley Vale had gone from a woman trapped in a nightmare to a woman who dismantled her enemy piece by piece. She'd lost everything and rebuilt it stronger. She'd been kidnapped, imprisoned, threatened, and poisoned, and she'd survived it all. Not because she was fearless, but because she'd found something worth being afraid for, someone worth fighting for, a family worth protecting. Iris ran up to them, holding a flower she'd picked from the garden. "Mommy, look, it's an iris, like my name." Fallon took the flower, tears in her eyes. "It's beautiful, baby, just like you." Iris, "Daddy says irises mean hope. Is that true?" Keaton, "That's true." Iris, "Then we should plant more, so we have lots and lots of hope." And so they did. They planted irises along the fence line, by the porch, down the winding path to the cabin, small, stubborn blooms pushing through rocky soil, year after year, a quiet promise written into the earth itself. Hope didn't come from forgetting the darkness. It came from surviving it and choosing every day not to let it win. Fallon learned that safety isn't the absence of fear, it's the presence of love strong enough to face it. Keaton learned that redemption doesn't erase the past, it builds something gentler on top of it. And Iris grew up surrounded by stories not of monsters, but of resilience. Because in the end, this was never a story about a kidnapping, or a villain, or a billionaire's downfall. It was about a woman who refused to stay trapped, a man who chose to protect instead of disappear, and a child who became the living proof that even the most broken beginnings can bloom into something extraordinary. Some people leave scars behind when they pass through your life. Others leave gardens, and if you're lucky, if you're brave enough, you learn the difference in time to plant your own. And if this story had you holding your breath, do me a favor, hit subscribe, tap like, and share this with someone who loves high-stakes drama with a hard-earned happy ending. Drop a comment and tell me, was Fallon right to play the long game, or would you have handled Thayer differently? Because if you think this was intense, you haven't seen what Fortune 29 Mystic Tales has coming next.